Welcome to week 8 of the Freedom Ticket. So this week we're going to be talking about how you can build your listing to not only convince customers to buy, but to also convince the Amazon algorithm that it should actually show your listing to customers who may be interested in buying. So you got to create a listing that actually creates a balance between what the customer needs to know in order to buy your product and what Amazon needs to know in order to show your product as relevant to that customer who actually might want to buy your product. Now there's a lot to a listing on Amazon. There's two different ways you can actually upload your data to Amazon. One is through the GUI, or the graphical user interface, which is the simpler way to do it and what most people do by logging into Seller Central. But there's also another way with what's called a flat file. And flat files are basically Excel spreadsheets. Now the flat files, or the Excel sheets, they actually contain a lot more information. They're a little bit more advanced, and they're great for people that have a lot of products, or for more advanced people who are used to dealing with a lot of data. But for a brand new user, I would probably stick to the GUI and just use it. And once you get comfortable with that, you could migrate over to the flat file templates, which will give you a little bit more flexibility, but they are a little bit harder to understand and deal with. So later, in a later module, Bradley's going to be showing you how to use the Helium 10 list building tool to actually make sure you've covered all your bases with all your keywords and everything, and then import that into the Amazon backend. And we'll be doing a little walkthrough and show you how to actually do that whole process. But there's a few key components of the listing that you really need to pay special attention to. The first one is the title. The title is by far the most important thing on your entire listing. What you put in that title is going to make a huge difference on how you rank, what Amazon sees you as relevant for. So you don't want to mince words in the title. You don't want to waste any space. The title usually is between 200 and 250 characters. In some categories, they limit it to 50, so depending on what you're selling in. And you want to try to maximize that as much as possible. Now, you don't want to just keyword stuff it and make no sense, like some people do. But you actually want to make it to where you can try to get at least 3 to 5 of your main keyword phrases that you're targeting in that title. And sometimes you can get real creative with the way you set up the title and actually have them nested. I could actually have in the title hand sanitizer travel size with gel, or something like that, and that would actually be 3 keywords in one phrase because it has the words hand sanitizer next to each other, hand sanitizer travel next to each other, and hand sanitizer travel with gel. So you can get creative in the way you organize the title to try to get as many different keywords and phrases in there as possible. The order does matter. So for your top 3 to 5 targets, you want to try to get those in exact phrase order, the exact wording. And then Amazon will mix and match. So any words that are in your title do carry a lot of extra weight. So even if you have hand sanitizer travel, the words hand sanitizer gel, even though the word travel is in between of them, Amazon will give you some extra credit and extra relevance for hand sanitizer gel. But when they're in exact phrase order, that actually is more powerful for the search engine. And remember, in one of the earlier modules, I showed you how to use brand analytics to actually see how many people are actually using those exact phrases in their title. And the less that are doing that for the keywords that you're targeting, the easier it's going to be for you to actually rank on those particular keywords. So that's the discoverability of your product is super important based on your title. Now, changing the title is okay, but I would try to keep that mostly within the first 30 days. You can change it anytime, and sometimes that can have great effect, and sometimes it can have a negative effect. But in my experience, changing it anytime within the first 30 days is typically okay. So any kind of A/B testing you may be doing with Amazon that we've talked about in other modules, or any kind of data you get from your search term reports, you're like, hey, you know what, I maybe should focus on this other keyword. Try to make most of those changes in that first 30 days if possible. And just keep in mind, if you do decide to change it down the road, sometimes it can kind of mess up the algorithm and mess up some of your relevance, and other times it can make a huge difference. I've seen some old titles that were pretty basic, and you come in and change them, and overnight their sales doubled. But I've seen the inverse too, where someone was doing really well and they decided, let's focus on a different keyword, and they change it and their sales go in half. So just keep that in mind. Try to do everything within those first 30 days if you can. Now also on your titles, when you're wording them, something just to keep in mind is they truncate. So depending on the mobile device, or the iPad or the tablet or the computer screen that they're being shown on, a lot of times not the entire title doesn't show. Or if they're in an ad or something and they're grabbing your title to show it in an ad, oftentimes these cutoff points are at 37 characters, 77 characters, and 107 characters. So if you can, try to make sure you have complete thoughts or complete sales messages at each of those breakpoints, because if it's right in the middle of a message or a sales message, in the way that you phrased it, it could cut off and it could cost you in some conversions. Another thing in your titles is you're not supposed to use a bunch of keywords. There's a bunch of stop words that Amazon doesn't like you to use. Like you can't say best or you can't say top. They really don't like you saying that in the title. Now there is a little title checking tool within Amazon Seller Central where you can go into the help section, and there's an option there where it says, do you want to change something about your listing? And you can choose that option and you can choose to change title. And in there, if you play with that a little bit and add some different things, you can put it through there and it'll actually come back and give you a warning if it's not allowed. So that's just a little tip. If you're ever concerned about a certain word, run it through that little help section in Seller Central, and it'll usually come back and tell you. Now, so the title is crucial. Your price is also crucial. So you want to make sure you have a very good price that your listing justifies that price. So whether if it's a high price, your listing quality and your image quality and your descriptions need to justify that price. If it's a low price, you need to just blow them out of the water with your images and make them feel like this is the deal of the century because it's so cheap. And speaking of images, that's the second most important part of your title. A lot of people will look at the title, price, and images. Those are three of the main things that people look at. So the images, you usually get 7 to 9 images depending on your category. And if you get 9, usually only the first 7 will actually appear on the listing, and they have to click to actually go through and see the rest. And we're going to talk more about images and talk more about title and all these different sections in later modules more in detail, but I'm just giving you the quick overview right now. But your main image is your most crucial image. And your second image is probably obviously the second most important image, because sometimes Amazon will toggle back and forth between the two images. And if it toggles back and forth, sometimes your second image can actually show up on the search results page. I like to upload at least 3,000 pixels or higher, but we'll talk more about images coming up in a future module in this week's training. The next thing that's really important are the bullet points. And the bullet points are the short little snippets that you see. Sometimes you see just someone will write just a simple little sentence there. Other times people will write a paragraph. I recommend you keep those at around 200 to 250 characters on your bullet points. Now these are more about the benefits of the product. It's why is your product different? You got to tell people in these why is it different. I don't really go into too much of the specs right here. I save that more for the description or the A+ content if needed. Unless it's just a critical spec, but this is why they should choose your product over somebody else's. Now, typically you get 5 bullet points, but in some categories you get 6, and in some cases you can even get up to 10 or 11 bullet points. It just depends on the category. So when you go in to actually add the bullet points, there's a little add more button there, and you can keep clicking that. It'll show just one by default, and you click that until it doesn't let you go anymore, and you can fill all those in. Now the bullet points actually get indexed, and so these are super important for relevance. So the keywords that you couldn't fit in your title, what I would call the second level of keywords that are your second most important keywords, those need to be sprinkled around in your bullet points. So you're going to try to naturally write and include those actual words. And the Helium 10 listing optimization tool will help you with that to make sure you've actually gotten all the phrases you're targeting in there. And then in a later module this week, Emma is going to be actually talking to you about how to actually write this copy to make it just pop off the page and help convince people to buy. She's going to give you some really cool tips and tricks about that. But your bullet points, the top 3 are probably the most crucial, because a lot of times all the bullet points won't show up. The customer has to hit more, and sometimes even on mobile, only the first 3 show up until they have to scroll down and see the rest. So those top 3 are where you really want to put your differentiating stuff. So if you're selling a spatula, and a lot of the other spatulas had complaints about how when the hand touches the handle, it's kind of hot, and yours doesn't, you would want to emphasize that in the first bullet point. One of the only spatulas on Amazon that is cool to the hand, no burns, or always focus on benefits, not features. So this is not where you just list a laundry list of features. And remember, if it's made of wool, you don't say made of wool. You're going to say something to the effect of keeps you warm. This special alpaca wool keeps you warm even in negative 25-degree temperature, or something like that. That's a benefit versus just saying it's made of wool. So you don't want to just state the facts. You want to say what is the benefit of everything in your bullet points. Another thing in your bullet points is you can't use all capital letters. You'll see some people in the past were taught to actually put like 3 or 4 words in all capital letters. Amazon really doesn't like that. They also don't like you using any kind of HTML or any kind of emojis in the bullet points. They're implementing some things where those are still showing up on some listings, but they're implementing some new software tools where it actually will strip those out and could show an error. So be careful if you're using any of that kind of stuff. They want it clean and uniform. The next part of your listing is the description, and the description is where you can add some more technical details if you want to. The description is where you can fill in what you couldn't say in the bullet points, and sometimes I even restate what I said in the bullet points, because sometimes on mobile, the first couple hundred words of the description actually show up above the bullet points. So make sure the first couple hundred words of your description are really strong, differentiating copy that if people read that, they're like, oh wow, this truly is different, and I want to know more, and hopefully they end up buying your product. You're allowed 2,000 characters in the description. You're not allowed to use any kind of HTML or emojis in there, unfortunately. So the description does get indexed by Amazon, so any keywords that you're able to put in there, but it has a lower priority in the A9 algorithm than the bullet points or the title. So you always want to make sure you get your main keywords, the main relevant keywords, incorporated into the title and the bullet points, and then any third level keywords can go down into the description. Another very important section of the listing is what's called the back end. And on the back end, there's a whole variety of fields, including like sizes, variations, material, where it's made, intended use. You're going to want to fill out as many of those as possible. And one of the most important ones back there is the search term field, where you're allowed 250 bytes, not characters. It's actually bytes. It's a little bit different wording there. And every character takes up so many bytes. Bytes is basically like the size of the letter. And so like in Spanish, an ñ, the N with a little dash on the top of it is actually 2 bytes, for example, versus just 1. And so you got to be careful there to not go over that. If you go over that, that entire field may not be indexed. So you want to make sure you stay within those 250 bytes. And the listing optimization tool from Helium 10 will help you ensure that. It'll do a little check on that and make sure you're not going over if you're concerned about that. Spaces do count in there as well. But this is where you're going to put additional words that you just couldn't fit in your listing. This is where you're going to put words, maybe it's Spanish words, maybe it's some additional misspellings, some other words that just didn't quite make it into the main listing. So that's what that field is for. But fill in as many of the back-end keywords as you can on size, color, all the other ones. It varies depending on the category, what's there. There's going to be a lot that you're going to leave blank that just don't apply to you. Maybe it just does it contain batteries. There's a whole lot of fields back there. So, but fill in as many as you can, because that's going to make a huge difference in the filtering. When a customer comes to Amazon, they type in, say, some sort of beauty product, and if you haven't checked in the back end where it's hyperallergenic, and they hit the little filter on the left-hand side that says show me only hyperallergenic products, yours is not going to show up in those results once they hit that filter. So you want to fill in as many of those extra fields as you can in the backside. Now these won't show up to the customer, but they're used by Amazon for relevance and for indexing and for filtering, as in this example. A couple different types of listings that exist on Amazon. There's what's called a standalone listing, where it's just a single product that's offered. And then there's also called parent-child listings. And a parent-child listing is basically when you have variations. A variation is when you have different sizes or colors. So if you have a makeup mirror and you got 4 different colors, each one of those is going to be a variation, each of the 4 colors. Or if you have sizes, small, medium, large, those are 3 different sizes. That would be 3 different variations. Well, what you have to do to actually create these variations is you have to create what's called a parent. And so you will create a parent ASIN, and the parent ASIN is not actually purchasable. It's not actually an inventory item that people will purchase. It's kind of like a placeholder, but it's a parent. And so you're going to fill that product in too, just as if it was a standard listing. And then you're actually going to create additional listings on top of that, which will each have their own ASIN. And these are the ones that people can actually buy, and those are called the children. So you would have one for if you had makeup mirrors and you had a red, white, and rose gold mirror, you would have a red child, you would have a rose gold child, and you have a white child. And each of those is going to be filled out completely with bullet points, description, title, and so on. And so what that will do is it will tie them all together. So when someone searches for and finds your makeup mirror, they're going to see the different options there. They're going to see that, oh, this is available in red, white, and rose gold. And maybe they typed in rose gold makeup mirror and they stumbled across your listing. And so it's going to show them the rose gold one. But then they also see you have a white and a red one, like, oh, my buddy wants a white one, and I'm going to get one for my wife, the red one. So they'll see the other variations there. So sometimes that can actually help you, especially when you're launching a new product or you're launching something new. You can take advantage of the sales of the previous one by adding a new product as a variation, if it makes sense. Other people believe that you should actually have every variation as a standalone. Some people say don't put them all together. Instead, take your 3 makeup mirrors and make one standalone listing for the red, one standalone listing for the white, and one standalone listing for the rose gold. And the idea behind that is that now you get more real estate on the page when somebody searches. So there's 3 different listings that pop up if you have them the right keywords and the right relevance, so that they pop up versus just one. So you can test it either way. You can always add variations later. You can make them individual, and then you can combine them later using a flat file, or you can actually uncombine them as well. And Seller Central support can help you actually uncombine them if you want to do that. But you're going to have to consider which way you want to do that when you're setting up your listing, if you're going to have variations or sizes. One other important thing when you're writing your title and your bullet points is you always want to focus on the why in your copy. So the why in your copy could be something like it crushes through ice, it prevents burns, or any kind of why. If you're able to add that into your title, especially towards the end of the title, because the first part of the title is you want to more emphasize the main keywords you're going after. But anything that shows the benefit of the product and the why of the product, if you can get that added in, it can actually make a big difference in conversions and sessions on your page. So this is just a quick overview of the main components of a listing. And we're going to dive into deeper detail on each one of those. And then we have some guest speakers that are going to come on and talk about them and even more. So we're going to have Emma that's going to be coming on talking about how to write really good bullet points and good titles. We have Karen that's going to be coming on and showing you how to actually create some amazing video content for your listing. We have Bradley's going to be showing you how to use the listing optimization tool and some of the other tools at Helium 10 to really create a good listing. So we've got a lot more cool stuff in store for you this week. Looking forward to seeing you in the next module.